You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Dirty Feet. This week we're doing something a bit different. Allison and Stephanie are out of the country. They're visiting New York for artistic inspiration. And because of that, I have a special guest host with me today, Tim Rodrigues. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
And we decided to do something a bit different. Rather than just interviewing artists who have an upcoming project, we decided to do a sort of roundtable discussion with two other guests, David Albert-Toth and Simon-Xavier Lefebvre. And we're going to be talking about men in dance. Basically, it's a subject that deserves a lot of attention and that we haven't been talking about a lot much. And we're really excited. So since this was Tim's idea, first of all, Tim, could you tell us a bit about what brought you to suggest this as a discussion?
I guested on Dirty Feet back in the Bouge de Sea episode this past January, and was asked to come back. And the subject of men in dance came up mainly because I know a lot of men in dance and am a former dancer myself. And I feel that sometimes when we get to talking about dance, it's more of a global thing, and it's almost implied that it's a bit exclusive to women. Not blatantly, but sometimes subtly implied, because whenever the subject of a male dancer comes up, it's almost like an albatross, or like something that's not quite real. So I just wanted to talk to some of the real men, not real men. Some of the
they weren't available, but they weren't available.
We did with what we could find.
So I wanted to be able to pull a couple of male performers, choreographers together to speak with us about this, as yourself and me are men involved in the dance world as well. So I just thought it would be an interesting conversation to have about male roles in dance and men coming into dance and their expectations, their passions behind it, and all things related with being a man in the performing art of contemporary dance.
And so, first of all, thanks for coming, guys, even though you were just like our second choices. But still, like, you are men in dance. Thank you for having us. Yeah. It's our pleasure. So you're men in dance. We've mentioned your names. We haven't talked about you yet. So could you just give us a brief idea of where you came from, what turned you into male dancers, quote unquote?
I'm curious about you, Dave. Why don't you start? First? Yeah, you're going first.
All right. So I started kind of messing around when I was a young teenager, like 14, 15. Got into popping and waving, and then from there that grew in kind of two ways. One was more of a formal training in urban dances. So going from popping and learning about the foundations of popping and locking, and then that brought me to house and kind of more freestyle hip hop, and then dabbling in some break, and just kind of staying in that world. And then on the other hand, started going to raves, and which was a lot more freeform. And back in the day, you had a lot of Montreal b-boys and poppers going to raves and hanging out in the jungle and drum and bass room. And there was this nice freeform sharing, not a lot of the big pressure of the battles. It never really attracted me so much, and spoke to me a lot. It was a lot of, I guess, movement exploration and kind of a weird contemporary dance take on street dance. So that kind of existed each on their own for a while. And eventually I found my way into contemporary dance, kind of a fluke. I started choreographing and teaching a lot within, the urban dance milieu, and wanted to branch out in terms of creativity. And I wasn't really finding what I wanted. I didn't really know what I wanted, but I wasn't finding it. And a friend brought me to see a show by a company that resembles what we would probably equate to Distinct Croisé, so a company that mixed contemporary dancers and hip-hop dancers. Company from Belgium, Hush 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 Productions. I saw it at Usine C. And I didn't know what Usine C was. I didn't know what contemporary dance was. I didn't know I was really...
How old were you?
How old was I? Must have been about 20.
Okay.
19, 20, something like that. And then on top of that, there was like multimedia. It was a very, stimulating show. And it kind of knocked me on my ass. And I was like, okay, cool. There's a lot of other stuff that I can be doing with the training that I have. But that's not staying within the sphere of what I know right now. There's this whole other world of theater dance where I can incorporate this stuff. And at the time, all I knew was like ballet companies and, that wasn't me at all. And so, I think I must have been at home talking to my mom or something, and down the street from where my parents lived, there was another family, the Turners. And I knew younger Turner Jeff because we went to Royal West High School together. And my mom was like, oh, she doesn't talk like that. She was like, she was like, the Turner's older son, Andrew, just went into contemporary dance and he sucked before. No. Big love to Andrew.
Yeah.
But she was, like blague à part, she was like, he didn't have a lot of dance training beforehand, and he went in and it seems like he's really enjoying it and it's going well for him. Why don't you look into that? So the TJ, the dance department at Concordia, ended up being across the street from where my parents lived. So I went and auditioned, not really knowing what I was doing. Got in, but because I was teaching so much, failed a class in Cégep. So I had to wait and reapply the next year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. True story.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah, blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Ended up in a great year. Loved the people who were in my year, and it was just these three to four really great years of being challenged. There were lots of men. Just on the topic of today, there were like 6 or 7 guys in our year who stayed throughout all 3 years. Now they're guys I work with, they're guys I know, they're friends of mine. And I think it brought a lot to the balance of that group. It was a big group, a lot of, really strong individuals, a lot of people making work right now, out of that year. And, so that's kind of how it happened. And then, throughout, I kind of fell into this mix of wanting to stay true to what I was doing before and taking on this new world and finding my voice somewhere between, hip hop and contemporary dance. And that lasted for a number of years coming out of school, showing work with, in the post hip hop project with Victor and things like that, really in that sphere of the people who are, balancing between those two worlds. And then recently I've started letting that go a little more in terms of just, finding just my own conceptual voice and not holding on so much to the form as much, though it's still obviously a big part of what I do.
The form of street dance and hip hop and stuff?
Yeah, I guess just it stopped being as much of a priority in terms of how I define myself as an artist. It's not quite at the forefront.
I heard it shows on the stage that you are how would I put it in English? Some kind of weird beast. So that
I'm a weird beast on the stage.
Take it as a compliment.
Okay.
As a compliment. You move like you move. So that's what I've heard from 2 different ladies.
From 2 different ladies.
Yeah,
all right.
I'll tell you after the interview.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. Monsieur Lefebvre.
Monsieur Lefebvre.
Dans l'histoire, s'il te plaît.
It's a similar story, actually, in terms of age. 1920 started to not focus, but get curious about this contemporary world dance. But I had never been dancing before, except just kidding around in my long johns with my brother, like pretending to do ballet in the basement and stuff like this. But my brother, it's important to mention because he did the National Theatre School of Canada. on Saint Denis there, and he's been doing theater since he's like 7 or 8. So since I'm 3 years older, I've been really curious about theater since a long time. But dance, not at all. But I've always been really sportive, actually a little hyperactive for people who know me. And I've, always liked to move and have fun being kind of looked at on the stage, a bit like my brother. So this was already done. And I started doing martial arts when I was doing my biology degree in UQAM. There was martial arts, there was Kung Fu there. So I did it for 2 years. 2 years and a half. And during the process, you meet people. So I met at the end of my back, I met a lady who was studying creation at UQAM, and she was always picking on me. So, you should dance, you should come in one rehearsal and stuff like. So it really happened like au hasard, like this. I was not interested at all about this contemporary dance world thing. I was the stereotype that was looking at it with the stereotype also. Was like, nobody understands anything about this. It's like that. But I knew theater, so that was kind of weird for me to say that, because I was supposed to be open-minded about it. And then started a master's in biology, so that was like early 20s, like 21, 22, something like this. And 6 months, something happened in my life. I was taking a walk. It's really that walk, and I met that lady again. She told me I'm doing a passerelle 840 tonight. You might want to come and something. So I had time on my hands. I was like, okay, let's go. This is going to be my first dance show, and I just lost it. I just fell in love with what happened on the stage. It was incredible. I didn't know anything about it. I felt so stupid. I was like, okay, I want to do this. I knew I wanted to do this. And right after the show, she came up to me and told me, so you want to rehearse with me? And that's just like 6 months, a year after I met that lady. I didn't even see that lady in that span of time. So, and she invited me 2 days after I was in a studio showing more Kung Fu moves to people. And she like introduced me to other students who were studying creation at UQAM. So I was used, and that's really the topic today, as a man, because there was no men at UQAM back in the days. That was like 21, 22. It's like 15 years ago. There was Jean-François Légaré, who was studying at the same time, Alexandre Parenteau, Frédéric Gravel, who was studying too. It's that particular year. So I was just like slipped in like this as a non-paying student. Huh?
Maybe no one will notice. We just have another guy.
Yeah, there you go. Another guy. And so my first show ever was a spectacle chorégraphique, something dirigé. Anyway, the
end of the semester.
The end of the semester, the end of the 3 years program for creation. That was my first show ever. Was at L'Agora, Studio de l'Agora. So every time I go back there, I remember my baptism, my stage baptism there.
And who is that choreographer? Who is
Marie-Josée Larreau.
Okay.
She works for Cirque du Soleil now. She's training artists and stuff. So we lost contact. So I did that year. I met Daniel Léveillé. He likes the raw, non-technical bodies. So he wanted me at that moment. Now he doesn't want me anymore. If you listen to this,
you've developed too much as dancer now.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I became too good. No, I'm kidding. As we said earlier, no, we're not good. We're not good. And so eventually, to end my story, I did that kind of off year at UQAM, being really interested about everything that was happening. They did a couple of passerelles 840 for other people too. And then I decided to focus more on my master's, which I quit because I was in a creative process at the same time. So I could really compare artistic research and to scientific research. And it gave me more like, how would I say it? Like concrete, reality, realness in the day-by-day process. I don't have that patience that the science people have, which I admire, and we need that.
Right.
But they have a patience for whatever they're doing, the numbers they're fumbling with, and they're going to be doing this for years. And I'm not going to say with no results, because I don't want to pretend they have no results. But for me, it's no result. I'm not having enough results. I'd rather paint something on a wall and see that what I'm creating doesn't work, but at least I see colors on the wall. I did something. So that's my thing. So I could compare. So I quit my master's, starting more diving into dance, getting like classes here and there, and then trained for 1 year at l'Admi. They gave at that time like technical classes for preparation for audition and stuff like this. I did this, and then I did the audition super relaxed. I was like 26. I didn't quite care if I was going in. So because you told me about your audition too. You were not really knowing. So I think that's the best state you can go to an audition in.
Yeah,
you're super relaxed.
I
you're
had
like
the exact opposite.
Oh yeah, I was nervous as hell for my
me
audition.
too.
And then I got in l'Admi, and then I met Dave St. Pierre and blah blah blah. So it started. I just did 1 year at l'Admi, but the end for me, the end of my school. Well, it never really ends. Keep learning.
So you're really
learning.
good at follow through, is what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe. And then we ended La Tendresse creation in Germany and Switzerland and Austria, and that was hard.
And that's like basically maybe 2 years after you came into dance.
That's a condensed learning school. It's something different. We had technical classes there, so it didn't stop. But it was hardcore. So, c'est rapide.
Wow.
So that's a bit my story.
And I think we should also hear from our co-host, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, my story. Okay. My story is, I guess, a little bit, I don't want to say traditional, but maybe. I started dancing when I was 7 years old. I took a tap workshop because I had an older cousin who was a competitive dancer in Ontario. And I just wanted to be like him. Plus, I also used to try and learn dances off of music videos, especially breakdancing. I mean, this is like, 86 through 89. So I'm trying to breakdance and be Michael Jackson or whatever. So I took the workshop, and the lady who ran the workshop told my mother, you need to put him in the classes. You just need to put him in the classes. He loves it too much. So I ended up taking tap class. And then from there, we ended up moving out of Scarborough, and we moved to a suburb in Ontario. And at that point, my mother was told, like, maybe you should put him into jazz. So I went to
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I went to I started dancing at a studio doing jazz and tap. I was the only boy in a class of, no lie, 30. And my age group, so I was 9. So my age group, I wasn't old enough to be with like the 11, 12-year-olds. So I was with, plus I was short. So in terms of like when you go to a studio, it's really about uniformity. So I was dancing with like toddlers. So after a year of dancing with the toddlers, which was super fun because I was 9 years old, didn't really matter as long as I was dancing. I ended up auditioning for the competitive troupe of that place, and I ended up competing. So I started competing in dance when I was 11 years old, 10 years old, and I had two great teachers. Arlene Murchison and Merlene Samuel Cephas, who were my first dance teachers. I competed until I was about 14, so through elementary school, and then I went to a fine arts high school in Toronto where I started studying ballet and modern technique. And the modern technique was Graham and Limon, and then we did a year of Horton. Closer to the end, I had three really great teachers while I was there. Julia Lava, Lauren Matthews, and Keith Lee. Keith Lee came in to teach us for 2 years. Keith Lee used to dance with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Company, Dance Theater, American Ailey, whatever.
American Ailey.
Yeah. Yeah, the Alvin Ailey Dance Company. From there, I kind of had a bit of a freak out in grade 12 and grade 13 where I didn't know what I wanted to do because dance was the only thing I knew, but I didn't want to live the life of a dancer.
That was your goth phase, right?
Yeah. Yeah, bro. Can you picture me as
phase.
goth? That was definitely my goth phase. And then it was Keith Lee and Lauren Matthews, two really strong male teachers in my life that kind of told me, no, you can actually do this. So I ended up auditioning for Ryerson University and was accepted by the Department of Dance, but rejected by the university itself because they don't let you in university with a 52 average. Kids out there, study hard if you want to go to university.
Even in dance?
Even in dance, the university was like, he cannot study here. I don't care. They didn't care if I was Baryshnikov. They're like, his grades are crap. So I went back and did a year, another year of high school, 6 years of high school. I had a friend who was at Concordia at that time who was in my dance class and she was studying at Concordia, and I ran into her in the summertime, and she's like, at Christmas time, and she said, "You need to audition for Concordia. It's where you should be." So I auditioned for Concordia and then Ryerson again, and then ended up choosing Concordia over Ryerson, and started at Concordia University in the fall 2001. That was a whole new world for me.
Montreal.
Montreal, like I loved Montreal. The world where it was a little bit weird was actually in the studio. There weren't any dancers like me at all.
Like very traditional?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a couple, but I think everybody else was just a little bit more open-minded, I guess, is a way to look at it. I was very much like of one sort of mind, and Concordia definitely opened me up to it. And I too was lucky enough to fall into a good class, which again was kind of like being rejected was probably a good thing, because I was delayed a year, and I ended up in a class with people who I ended up collaborating with afterwards, and I still have as close friends. I feel like name dropping. I'm not going to though. And while I was at Concordia, I met David here, and we've worked together since. And then I actually left dance after my degree. And I have a friend who admonished me for it for a little bit. She basically like almost slapped me one day after a performance. It's like, I don't know why you don't want to dance. I ended up getting into lighting design, because while I was at Concordia, we did Spiral, the first Spiral my year, and I ended up doing the lighting because I had a little bit of experience with it.
Yeah, Spiral. I remember that.
I ended up lighting that because I had the experience, and I subsequently lit further Spirals, like ones that happened after, and then ended up looking after a black box space. So I got really into design and creating for the stage, and staging work is really where my mind was going. I ended up at the National Theatre School of Canada for a year studying lighting design, and then I came out and was TD at Studio 303 for a year, and then freelanced for a bit and toured with Rubber Band Dance Group as a technician. And
we toured together.
Yeah. And we have toured together with Andrew Turner.
Went to Jean-Pierre.
Yep. We've toured together.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah. So still in the dance milieu, and that's I guess the long and short of my story. I like telling that story. I'm just going to say that.
One of the interesting things looking at it is that all three stories we've heard right now are, I mean, except a bit for Tim's, but in most cases they're really different from the normal background of a dancer, like what we imagine people having started dance at 5 with ballet, taking really traditional studio classes and everything. The stories of a lot of guys who end up in dance quite often is a bit through the fringe. It's a bit like a lot of guys I know in dance came from martial arts. Simon-Xavier, you were saying that you'd done kung fu, or from breakdancing. Like urban dance is one of the big magnets that attracts guys to dance. And I find it's interesting because just as artists, it does take you from a really different path than a lot of people. And also a lot of guys who go into dance go at it later in life with a bit more of an understanding of where they are in life. It's not just what they've been doing their whole lives. I mean, Tim, in your case, you said that's what you'd been doing your whole life, and then you found something else that was still connected to it, but that was not necessarily, I want to be a dancer, I want to be on stage, I want to be seen. No,
it's just I need to be around dance. That's the thing that's what kept me. Like everything is always coming back to dance. So there's that need, there's that attraction to the art form in any way I can be involved in dance is what it's about for me. So I don't know. There's like a lot of things behind me leaving, but I always have to be involved in dance. So yeah, for other men who discover movement, a lot of them have said that it's the physicality of contemporary dance that challenges them. Is that something you guys found that kept you there?
It's totally part of the concrete day-to-day thing. Is if your muscles are sore, it's another kind of a result, in quotes, that you feel at the end of your day. So yeah, it's the challenge of it, but it's also the feeling that you've exercised during the day. It's not only created artistically, but that was really something I fell in love with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice too because there's a variety in terms of the physicalities that you can find in contemporary dance. That's not impossible to find in other forms, but more difficult, I think, because when you're talking about, like quote unquote styles of dance, usually a style is defined by a certain type of physicality. So you can have, soft and hard variations on that physicality. But the more you zoom out, I think of talking about, style, the more variety you see in the physicality. So, if I'm talking about my own past in terms of urban dances, if you talk about popping, I mean, there are some a variety of physical textures within popping, but when you zoom out into urban dances, then you have a much wider array. And when you talk about contemporary dance, especially as one might say, on the one hand, a reference form, like a form of reference, and then on the other hand, personal exploration, personal movement exploration. Those two things in conjunction with each other open up the entire world of possible physicality. So whether you're working as a choreographer and trying to identify various influences, or whether you're working as a dancer or interpreter with a variety of choreographers who each have their own very distinct physicalities that you take on and embody, there's always this kind of challenge, this new level to meet, and you're always like the goals become with time, I think, more subjective, than an objective set of goals that you hit. It's qualitative, it's not quantitative.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I wouldn't say by any means that speaks exclusively to men, but I do think that there's something in the male psyche that loves that idea of like, okay, so I've got this down. What's next?
I want to nail this.
Yeah. I want to nail this.
No, I want to nail this. Yeah. No. Oh, I nailed it. I'm going to switch to something else.
Nailed it, bro.
Yeah, nailed it. Come on. All right.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
Like it's a caricature, but it's kind of true.
There was the idea of that really in how I would describe how I was describing the program at Concordia to people when I was back home during university. They were like, "Oh, what is it like?" I was like, "Well, right now I'm learning." In high school, I was learning what my body could do in Limon or Graham or the ballet, but now I'm learning what my body can do. Period. It's like it's really that expansion of. There's no limit in contemporary art, right? Like because it's constantly evolving or devolving or changing. It's so fluid. So when you're involved in it on a performing level, you're constantly tested, and it's that challenge. It is nailing it and moving on. Like you want to get that stuff. It's like that's part of the beauty of watching late in life performers, point finale, make the transition to extraordinary performers, regardless if they're male or female. When you see that transition, it's the beautiful thing about contemporary performers. It's that finding out what your body can do, like really pushing yourself. It's evident.
What's nice too in that sense is it's less codified. And I think in talking about like the variety of textures and physicalities out there, and Tim, what you're talking about in terms of mature virtuosity, for lack of a better term, maybe. But it's that lack of codification that exists in contemporary art that makes it more subjective. When you see a master of their craft and that kind of ideal that you want to get to, it's also about how am I going to find my own way to express myself to the best of my abilities. And when you see people who have been in the game for a number of years who are able to really to express something special, something unique, it's different than seeing someone working within a specific style, whether that's ballet or tap or hip hop or what have you, who are able to really like express themselves through a series of codified movements or languages, which is equally impressive but different, not what we're talking about now. But when you can see someone really embody that thing, that idea, and you're not necessarily able to put your finger on it either. Yeah. You can't just follow the same path, and if you work really hard, get to the same place. It's someone who's really made their own way there. And you look at the people who are now, amongst the most established, solo dance artists in contemporary dance. That's essentially what they've done.
Yeah.
And what I like too, and I think this is also something that maybe, or it speaks to the part of me that's a man specifically, is the idea that there's no point in trying to do what they did. That's not interesting anymore. They've done that now, So how do you find your own voice within that? How do you carve your own way? Seek and conquer,
The weird beast is anyway. You've conquered something. Weird beast.
That's interesting because you're talking a lot about finding your own way, finding your own physicality, and that research, according to what Simon-Xavier was saying, is part of the thrill. It's that chase for pushing your body further, but also discovering your body in a way that's different. Like men usually are going to be attracted to more typical types of athleticism, sports team mostly. When you get into dance, it's, all gloves are off in a way. Like you don't have the same kind of boundaries or, the same kind of directions that you had when you get into dance. How is this adapting to your own approaches to your body when you started dancing to this imposition of movement? Because in a way, when you're being choreographed on, you're being told what to do. There's a physicality that's put onto your body. And quite often from female choreographers who have a totally different approach to the body than what you guys have for yourselves. So how was this when you guys first started dancing, trying to embody a form of masculinity to some extent, but from a female perspective?
Early on, I didn't have this conception at all. I just wanted to dance. So I was just happy to dance. But, when your career goes on and you discover and people discover you and you discover yourself in the world of dance and then you realize, I'm living out of this and I'm making money and I can live with that. And then you start to have I started to have a different approach. Now I would love to work with that person. It settles in later. At the early stages, I just was, as I was saying, happy to dance, and I just wanted to dance like a petit veau, excited. Can I nail this? Can I do this? All right, I did this show. I know I'm joking around, but there's this voice in your head that's saying actually this douchey male voice is going, I nailed it. But, and then you become a little more wise and curious about this world, this variety of choreographers that exist and stuff. And then you want to work with her, him. And, I'm usually now super happy to work with recently, example, I worked with Estelle Clarton for Théâtre de Katsu in October. I'd never worked with her. I was excited. I wanted to work with her since a long time. I didn't know how I was going to do that, and very excited to approach her way of moving and put it in my body. And I wanted to satisfy her first thing, and then really absorb the thing and think about how I'm moving maybe after rehearsal when you come back home. But the first thing I wanted to satisfy her, the way I move, is it okay for you? And then you come back home and you're like, yes, I'm doing some Estelle Clarton moves. All right. And she likes it. So now it's more like this. The more variety I can get, especially from female choreographers, why not? I will just be happy to be trying to move as they want me to move or like they move. So it's totally different. I think it's just the older you get, the more experience you get, the more curious you get. But, that's my path. But maybe you, Tim, since you were dancing since an early age, you were more knowledgeable about the variety early on. I don't know.
I think the variety question kind of hit me in university when I was charged with being an interpret for other people, and it was just kind of like, what am I doing? What kind of a guy am I supposed to be in this piece? Or does the movement actually feel right on me based on the experience of the choreographer I was working with? And that's where some questions started to come up in my head, just kind of where I kind of became a little preoccupied with the notion of female choreographers creating on men and kind of having this vision of masculinity that I was supposed to be portraying. Not to say that I was ever at odds with it, but I think I became aware of it.
Okay.
I became aware that I was a guy on stage.
Okay.
Which is weird because I did a lot of ballets where the role in high school, not a lot of ballets. I did a lot of ballet on stage in high school where it's so clearly defined that it's not even, you don't even think about it. You're just like, well, yeah, I'm the guy in a ballet. I'm going to have a couple of solos, do some jumps, lift the girls, and
there you go.
come on and off stage. But then I became more aware of myself as a man on stage in university, and what did that actually mean? Did it even mean anything? To me, it was just kind of like I wanted to show that I wanted to be a dancer first, and then I wanted to be a man second on stage. That was how I looked at it. And one of the greatest compliments I ever got in technique class in university was that somebody told me I was just as graceful as the women in the class.
That's where you want to be. Yeah,
because
totally.
I just want to be one of the dancers. If the majority of the dancers were my female classmates, then I wanted to be on their level.
Yeah, there you go.
And that was it. It was a dancer first and a man second, for me at least. Dave, we were speaking about this earlier before we started recording, and is the idea of that role of masculinity on stage for a female. You've worked with women, you were saying before, choreographers who have asked you for your input for what it means to be like how you as a man would approach this male character. And I just wanted you to come back to that.
Yeah. Well, like through school, I ended up being in a couple pieces where I didn't really question what it was to be a man in that piece, and some of them were, male female duets and things like that, where it was just, okay, well, you're the guy, you're gonna, make the girl lift and make the girl turn and dip her, and that's that. And then it was after school where I started being involved in a couple projects that made me think a little bit more about it, because they required more interpretation than just dancing. So it was that transition between what you're saying, between being a dancer first and then a man second, to being faced with the fact that because of the dramaturgy of that piece, I actually had to be a man first and a dancer second. But they weren't necessarily archetypal male roles. I was, if there are two in particular. One was, I danced a piece with Emmanuel Calvé, at Tangente a few years ago. And that was an important piece for me in terms of, it was one of the first pieces where I really had to sit down and think about what I was bringing to the performance, and working with Janelle Chagnon as a rehearsal director. She really asked a lot of these questions, and I think it was great because I feel that she believed in me and so pushed me to assume. So that was interesting because Emmanuel's world is very fantastical in a sense. So there was a lot to work with, and there were a lot of different layers that I could go pull in terms of the masculinity. It wasn't just, the strong man who's grounded and supports the woman while she's doing all the fancy moves.
Yeah.
There was a lot of responsibility on my shoulders in terms of expressing the different, fantastical creatures that existed in her world. And so it let me be, on the one hand strong and dominating, and then on the other hand more sensitive and questioning and
creative
and everything in between, all of the gray zones. So that was a really important piece for me, and it was one of the first performances where I was able to show some of that stuff on stage. And some people still talk to me about, how that was the first time that they saw me, show this other side of myself. So whenever I think about, what is it to be, or from my experience anyway, to be a man on stage, I do think back to that piece, and while on the one hand, because she really defines her world in her own way, there was this, a bit like what you say, Simon, in terms of wanting to come into rehearsal and do her movement, the way she does it, and, please her in that way. She also has, physical abilities that I just, don't have. Like she's got a ridiculous plie that I don't have. I'm 6'3", totally I got no butt. It's like I had to work really hard to like take some of those movements on, and then also realize later on in the process that okay, if I'm going to make this work, I have to do exactly that. I have to make it work. And I think that's a big part of working for female choreographers and a female's vocabulary is understanding your own body and understanding how to make it work. Because we don't have the same bodies. And maybe this is also something that is just very personal to me because I have tight hamstrings. I don't have a lot of those, things that
prototypical dancer tools.
Yeah. Thank you.
Make en dehors and stuff like this.
So I get by, but I always have to think about, okay, how am I going to take this on and make it my own? And then that in turn has become something that I apply working with anybody. Now man or a woman is now like, okay, well, how do I take this and do it justice so that it fits with their world, with their aesthetic, but make it so that I don't look like an idiot either, or that I'm just trying to mouth along the,
Yeah. You're not faking it.
You're not faking it. It's got to be real because I think that's, in these projects where you're being asked to bring a part of yourself, that's what's most important is that on stage people feel that you're speaking your own voice and you're being yourself and you can smell it right away. You can smell when it's not real and when it's real. And then the other piece that was defining in that was working with Simon-Xavier with autofiction, which is totally a different thing, which is not fantastical. It's very much real world. It's set outside, working with concrete, working with a car. And I mean, that's a piece that we've been doing now for maybe like 6 years. It's still running. Andrew Turner also, was in that. So again, he came back as a bit of an influential voice. But working with Milan was interesting because she really put at the forefront this idea of, for me, it was one of the first times working with a choreographer who pulled a lot more movement from the interpreter and created from the interpreter. And I thought that brought a lot of value because in terms of the masculinity of the role, it broke through immediately a lot of the barriers that you would be faced with because she was dealing from her point of view, but open to our input, and so that was a really interesting process early on, and also with a guy like Andrew, who if you need him to be vocal and generous in terms of what he brings to a process, he can for days.
He can talk for days.
He can talk for days. That guy. Where is that guy anyway?
Yeah.
He had two things this morning.
He's talking. I saw him. He's talking.
But it was great also because they had been working together already. It was actually a replacement for that role originally. So to work with someone like Andrew and Milan coming into that kind of process already was really informative in terms of what you can bring as the man of the piece, because Andrew was the man of that piece, and my role actually is funny that I bring it up because it became an ambiguous role because it was later danced by Louise Michelle Jackson and Emily Honegger and was originally a woman's role by Joyce, a German dancer. So then that's in a sense why it was informative, was I was coming into a woman's role, replacing her now as a man. On top of that, Joyce is, maybe, 5 something and I'm 6'3", very different body types, really trying to look at, okay, well, what's essential in this role, and how do you take what's essential, leave everything else and take it on, and make it your own. So I think for me, that was the big thing that I learned in those two pieces in terms of working as a man in dance. I think men and women, of course, have to deal with this, but specifically as a man, when we're talking about working with women, it comes down to the fact to how are you going to take what's essential to what's being given, what you feel essential, and what the choreographer is telling you is essential. I mean, you have to listen to that, of course.
It. Yeah.
And then for the rest of it, take it on for yourself and bring your own sense of masculinity to that role.
If the essential part of the masculine role is to be, is to embody an aspect of masculinity that is not present in your everyday life, how do you approach that? Like if you have to be a bastard on stage.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, hang on. Do you mean not in your everyday life? Because then Simon probably should.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. I wouldn't be working.
In all seriousness, in a piece where the impetus is a little bit more intense or intimate, or intensely intimate, and you're supposed to embody this male role that is maybe violent or neglectful or.
I have a piece right now in my head that resonates as Jérémy Niel, Croire au Mal, which I did. Was super happy to do this. He's really in the body theater kind of thing. It's not quite acting. It's not quite moving. It's not quite anything. But he knows. You know that you nailed it, and you know that when you're off track during rehearsals, you know that that time I raised my eyebrow. I did too much. I saw you. And you become really sensitive about his world, and that's one of the challenges. It's like, well, actually, to answer directly your question, it's like any challenge, like moving like that particular female choreographer would be a challenge. Being a bastard on stage would also be, even though I'll surprise David, would also be a challenge. But in that particular piece, I really had to be kind of a serial killer that rips his genitals off with a kitchen knife, and also bangs the head of this transgender character that we had on the stage, played by Francis Lahaye. Beautifully, I had to bang his head on the floor for like 2 or 3 minutes. But I had a blast. It was so fun, just embodying this and being really mysterious and I don't know, frightening people in a way, but not with the will of frightening people. Just being that weird thing. I don't want to say weird beast because that's Dave's. No, but that was another challenge that was really, really nice. Because masculinity is going to come out anyway. Because even if you don't want to play that role, I know I go to UQAM, I do some coaching, you give some technical classes sometimes, and when you start to have the role of professor, which I'm starting to have a little more now, you get those comments or reactions from your I don't want to say your students, but people you deal with, like let's say students at UQAM or things, and you're like, oh, you're that Simon-Xavier, you're that manly guy on the stage. I'm like, and I hear that a lot, but I'm in my mind, I'm like, can I be something else? I know I did other pieces where I'm not manly, I'm just weird, and I've been told like, come on, and so you don't want to be only that guy, but your body's gonna give off something that people see, and that's what it's gonna be.
Right.
If the lighting shows your muscles, then you're super manly. But even in a vulnerable moment, like I've been having that blonde wig naked with Dave St. Pierre for a long time, for years.
Yeah.
And I don't feel manly at all. Believe me, I'm raising my voice and I'm super sensitive at that moment. So,
that's the character that he asked
That's
you
the
to
character, and we're not manly at that moment. So in my mind, I know like I can nail other things than just being manly. But if that has to come out, it's going to come out all your career. It's just going to be like that because you got a beard. I'm short and how do you say stocky. So that's how I am. I'm a dwarf on stage or something. But just it's another challenge to answer your question. Yeah.
And from sort of to piggytail on Tim's question, from a sort of ethical perspective to some extent, like the whole like male brotherhood type of thing, where males can get a bit the short end of the stick in the public domain. Guys can be criticized for being stereotypes quite often, like the fucking bastard guy. Do you guys ever feel that you should reject a role, or you should talk with the choreographer about their perspective on masculinity? Do you ever feel like, well, your perspective on masculinity is limited right now, and I feel that artistically it's causing harm to the work? Do you ever feel that you need to justify masculinity so that it's not seen, it's not too pigeonholed to some extent?
Well, it had to happen in some processes. I remember, like for particular moments. How do you treat masculinity versus femininity? Is that how you said it? So yeah. This could this particular moment could be awkward. Like you could Do you want that?
Just
okay,
so you know.
You want. Okay, you want it. Let's keep it. We'll deal with it during the shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of times, yes, but also it's often masculinity versus femininity. So the man doesn't work. Anyway, we all know the cliche about it. So you don't want to be always the strong and the woman. Oh, she's too abused. You can reverse the roles, and that's going to be interesting too. But if that's what the person wants, well then. But it's good to have a talk about it. Yes.
It's necessary to have a talk about it.
Yeah,
that way it's nobody's playing a role. Everybody gets to be truly 100% true to themselves. Because if that's the role that he wants you to play, then it comes down to a basic thing of like, okay, let's go. Mm-hmm. That's my responsibility as your interprete. That's what you need to say in this moment. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
But I do believe that as humans, it's good that those conversations happen because it's respectful to everybody in the process, to the choreographer, to your fellow dancers, to yourself, and to really the community. It's like, look, we talk about these things, and I'm not afraid to have to be that guy if I have to be that guy, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm not passive in this. I'm trying to be active.
Yeah,
I'm trying
so
to be true to
Yeah,
myself.
there you go.
You know, it's good. It's a good.
I often challenge Virginie Brunel. Often. I'm a bugger for this one. Like, oh, where's the man duet there? Oh, when's she carrying me? So that happens a lot. So I kind of tend to pick on her a little bit because we're friends also on this. But then she knows I want to deal that thing and that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm going to do those thousands of lifts in an hour, but I'm so going to enjoy the moment when she's going to lift me for an hour. So that might never happen, but you know, it's my way to maybe try to enrich her and the whole rehearsal process too. So
I think the questioning usually comes when we see archetypes on stage, you know, and that goes for men as for women. I think as soon as we see archetypal women on stage, women are drawn to ask, you know, okay, well, why? You know, what are you trying to say?
What is she really doing?
What is she really doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I mean, I think that's a part of contemporary art that's important, and it's very concerned with questioning and looking at things from a different angle, and we're making art these days and the past while that deals with those things. You know, we're concerned with that. And the same thing goes with men. You know, when you see archetypal men on stage, you're immediately drawn to think, okay, well, you know, is this a conscious decision or is this out of ignorance?
Yeah, there you go.
And when you see archetypes being broken on stage, that immediately tells you, okay, well, this person is dealing with that question. On the other hand, I think what's important to also realize is that at this point, gender has been present enough in a lot of not only our art making, but for so long that it's now become part of our education too. When those of us who've gone to school to learn to make art have learnt about this already in school before we're even in the professional milieu. And by the time we're getting to the point where we've been making work for a number of years, these are questions that we have been asked or we have asked ourselves already. So just to share my experience and my point of view, I don't usually feel that I haven't, just as it's happened, I haven't felt the need to really address it with a lot of choreographers because I feel that there's already a reasoning behind it. And if I'm portraying a certain type of man, generally I'm working with people who I think trust is a big thing. And I think that's again across the board, but
most definitely.
Definitely. And so, yeah, I mean, you have to trust the people you work with. And I think if a choreographer comes with enough of a feeling of reflection already on a topic, then those questions are in a sense already answered. You know, there are issues that you don't necessarily have to deal with. And in the times where I've had to portray an archetypal man, whether it's, you know, like a macho dude, is generally already within an artistic context where I don't really have to question just that. We're already talking about other bigger questions. And given those questions that we're dealing with, the fact that there's an archetypal man on stage makes sense.
Yeah.
Or it's not an archetypal man. It's a totally different interpretation of a man, whether it's a very sensitive man or a more feminine man or just a total weirdo, you know, like whatever the take on the masculinity is, generally it's within a sphere that's already well enough defined and well enough researched and well enough discussed between all the choreographer and the dancers that we know what we're working with. So then we can just go in with it. And then, of course, like Simon said, whether it's through jokes or through dialogue, you challenge because you become part of that work, and you bring parts of yourself to that.
Well, it will depend on the riskiness of the work too. So I totally, that resonates too. I totally agree with what you say. You got to have confidence in the people you work with. But depends also the riskiness of the tableau. If you have to dive in the audience naked with a blonde wig, for instance, there will be some questioning.
For sure.
20 people on the stage, 20 different personalities.
For the last 10 years, that piece.
Yeah. We're going to be in Munich, and it's going to be the first time we do this in Munich. We're not home. So obviously there's going to be some questions, some holding back, some pushing over, some, and that's beautiful. That's part of the process too. But it depends on the tableau. But
in a way, much like a lot of different issues, it's about the laxism, like the way the idea is going to be approached and questioned, that there could be a problem when it comes to gender. Not so much the fact that stereotypes come back, but the fact that people will not address the issue enough, and people will be lazy to some extent in how to bring this up.
I think it's also important to know whether you're working for a choreographer or going to see a choreographer's show and forming an opinion on that choreographer's work. I think it's important to know or to have an understanding already of what questions is that choreographer concerned with, because not everyone is concerned with the same questions. And if you're going to see a choreographer's work who's not concerned with gender roles and identity, but asking other questions and happen to be using gender roles to answer those questions, you can't just tackle everything either. You can only talk about so much. So if I'm working for someone who's not concerned with gender roles and I feel they're using archetypal gender roles, it would be short-sighted of me to only see a problem there and challenge that, rather than thinking about what the bigger picture is for this creator. And the same goes for myself as a creator. I can't question every single thing I do. I have to think about what the important questions are that I want to deal with, and how do I feel I can best deal with those questions with the tools that I have. And I think that applies also to when you're going to see work. I think we have to make the effort to see what that choreographer is dealing with. And if they are dealing with gender roles and they are questioning that, and that is at the forefront of their mandate and at what they're wanting to give to their audience, then we need to be asking ourselves those questions, and probably not others, but other choreographers will take, your typical man and woman, or be dealing with two men or two women, in order to be asking other questions. And I think it's important to know when gender roles are a quote unquote issue in the work and when they're just to be assumed.
When are the performers the every man and the every woman? And when are they the woman and the man? There's the difference.
But
in that,
I also don't I don't think we see a whole lot of it right now, which is a whole discussion in and of itself. But I think there's also the idea that just because you're dealing with two men, like we're talking about the everyday people, and we talk a lot about the man and the woman, and that's true. That's predominant reality in dance. Whether you're dealing with a heterosexual or a homosexual choreographer, the predominant format for the everyday people is man and woman. But I don't think just because you have two men portraying a relationship on stage or two women portraying a relationship on stage, that necessarily either means that there's gender roles being addressed. That can just be the choreographer's reality that they're dealing with, in order to talk about other things. I mean, I think it tends to be, when you're talking about sexuality on stage and relationships, forcément, like you have some questions about gender roles and who's assuming what role in the other. But it may not necessarily always be at the forefront. Those may be a path to talk about something larger.
Yeah.
Well, we can address nudity in the same way that we address gender roles as well. We can address everything, actually, in kind of the same way when you need to question it like this. But, you gotta, I remember a question, this particular metteur en scène wanted me at that moment to be naked. So I was like, I'm going to try it. I'm willing to do anything. Yeah. You know me. But no,
I've seen videos.
Yeah, I know. I showed you. I got it on my iPhone. But still, I questioned that at the moment. But, it's my role to try it and dive first. So I did it. I was like, okay, Now you see it's lame now? No, I'm kidding. That's not what I said. But but I proposed to him. I suggested that the piece might be richer if as me, Simon-Xavier, people are going to see me and know I can be naked on this stage and I don't mind. Maybe the piece, I'm just asking the question,
advocate.
maybe will be richer if I am not naked in that particular moment. Knowing people could see me naked in that moment, it would be nice to reverse the thing and I could be not naked at that moment. Is that a good idea? We tried it and we nailed it. It was more interesting that I wouldn't be naked. Maybe another interpreter would have been naked and it would have passed like no problem. And but I was in that moment in my career, I was kind of always naked. And I really addressed
So you were in college?
I was in high school. No, so we can address nudity the same way we address like gender roles and
For
stuff.
sure,
like this.
because because that is kind of, I mean, nudity is really there's no more costume. It's like that's a man, that's a woman, or that's a transgender person. It's like it's there. It's physically there. So it's almost like forcing the issue. Exactly, it's forcing the issue. It's in your face, and I think that's part of what some people try to avoid, and what some people chase. I mean, some people don't want it to be there, but some people feel I need to get their attention.
Yeah.
So,
And it can also show vulnerability of the person, of the body in front of you. There's some of clinical aspect to the nakedness, like right in your face thing. But is it really that is showing, or is it just showing a naked person for a naked person? And that's where you don't want to hit that. You want to be more in vulnerability.
You want there to be substance.
Yeah, you want and that there was no substance at that moment because it was not the moment to be naked, and also, as I was saying, because it was me that was naked on stage. At that moment, it would have been Dave. It would have been beautiful. I tell you, beautiful.
True. That's very unexpected of Dave's reputation as an interpreter.
Yeah, and it maybe at that moment in his career, to like compare to mine at that moment, it would have been richer to have you.
I mean, I'm naked right now.
I know. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
where to take this after that kind of discussion?
Yeah.
Where to go next? Talking about this, Simon-Xavier, you said earlier about, you were joking, saying to Virginie Brunel, when are you going to put in a male duet? And you did create, like we know you more as an interpreter, as dancer, but you did create a male duet with Lel Stellick at Short and Sweet. So is this like one of the things that you, as a creator, as an interpreter, but also someone who would like to create movement, is masculinity or the relationships between men something that you gravitate towards?
That's right on. That's because I'm, Lael and me are very interested in, like we're talking about masculinity, that research. We're still doing it's still on. We're still researching. We're in a little break right now, waiting for answers from different people we wrote to. Not going to talk about that because it's the period right now. We're all into this as creators, but we're treating masculinity, and the topic is very clear. It's male affection, and that's very precise. That's what we want to treat. And it's not homoerotic, even though we're going to be kidding around and doing homoerotic stuff, because humor is going to come out of it. But, and when we see it on I was going to say on tape, when we see it on video, we see a great deal of sensitivity is coming out of this, even if we're kidding around. So since the Short and Sweet, we looked at the video and we heard the comments that a lot of affection between Lael and me came out. And then we decided, let's focus on this and let's go with male affection. Like we always have this stereotype of what we can do with like friend to friend, like knock fists together, give a good slap, like a little tap on the bum and stuff like this. But we don't even know how. Well, we might know, but we don't treat that on stage. I think it's going to be an original subject to treat. I hope it's going to be good. But the research is going on. It's very interesting, and we're. Every time we can hug each other, a little kiss on the shoulder, kiss on the cheek, even though it like flirts or brushes the subject of homoerotic, it's still there's a lot of affection coming out, and I think it's masculinity can be there on stage with sensitivity and affection, like really warm affection between two boys. That's possible.
There was that in previous work you've done that has been present as well. In Now I Got Worry, you have a duet with Manu.
Yes.
That is very. I remember.
Yeah, very
full disclosure. I remember lighting that moment, and I was just like, it needs to be soft. That's a delicate moment with the way you guys carried each other and performed together. That is a refreshing role to see two men perform on stage together. It is very refreshing. It's very it's paternal. It's fraternal. It's base human affection.
And you're like, oh, thank God there's no sexuality on stage.
Or thank God they're not hitting each other.
Yeah, exactly. They're not fighting. They're not having sex. They're not proposing any sexual intentions.
It's funny because I feel that that's one of the last taboos about masculinity on stage, which is affection, which is not homoerotic, because that's one of the things that's permeated dance since, like Ted Chan and everything, where males on stage are going to have that homoerotic desire that's very much embodied, but like actually showing males as more than just like fist pumping like idiots, or the prop that's going to help women, fly higher. It's not something that a lot of creators seem to go towards or allow themselves to explore, whereas it's a really rich subject. Like they're and from this discussion today, that's one of the things that came up, that men are much more complex than we sometimes give them credit for. And I think that there's a big hunger there, especially from males in dance, to express this wide array of what masculinity can be and can represent. And there was actually a piece, Still Standing Here. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Well, I've seen excerpts about it.
It was like, for me, masculinity in dance and this like brotherly relationship of men, and how male relationships can be so wide to some extent is one of my favorite. It's my little obsession when I choreograph. And that piece just basically like blew my mind because it looks at males as, in a way as children. Like, even if we grow older, there's still that sort of buddy-buddy, playful relationship that stays in male relationships. And it just played with that so much. It toyed with it. It was goofy, but also it was heartfelt. It was genuine. It was authentic. And this is the kind of stuff that we need, I find, for guys on stage to not be just this stereotype.
Yeah. That's, I believe that's the underlying thing that we've all been talking about. It's just that we are more than the furniture, and we want to show those levels to men, because maybe they're not represented well enough in contemporary dance, which I think is actually a valid statement to say. I'm not trying to undercut anybody's work or anybody's research, but I think that I don't think that we're just scratching the surface still of exploring
we totally are
male roles on stage.
Every time you go see a show, there are men on the stage, and you're kind of, as a man, wishing that there's going to be an awesome duet or trio between those men and something more complex evolving. And I'm not criticizing the works that I've seen. It's all nice. But still, when I find myself in the studio doing research with Lael Stellick, I'm knocking myself on the floor. I'm so happy. It's so nice. We can do some awesome lifts, some messed up moves that only men can do together because we're super strong. But also we can hug each other and be sensitive. So we totally free. So we're only scratching it so far. We're gonna start a trend, man. We're gonna start a trend right here. No, but
this episode's just gonna change everything.
It's gonna change the Earth is going to switch its angle a little bit.
It's like in Superman 1 or 2, I don't remember when, he just turns around the world and it turns back time. Well, this is kind of the same world shifting moment.
There you go.
Well, again, David, Albert-Toth, Simon-Xavier, Lefebvre, thank you so much. I'm sure there could be a lot more stuff that could be said about the subject. We're totally running out of time. But thank you so much. And Tim Rodrigues for being our co-host today. Thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts.
Thank
you, guys.
Guys.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Dirty Feet was previously recorded at the Montreal Improv Theatre and is currently recorded out of Mainline Theatre. Thanks, dudes.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par
Produced and hosted by Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.